Well, welcome back to the Pure Signal podcast here in the global headquarters of Credera in Dallas, Texas. Ryan Medellin, a manager in our marketing solutions practice, joined by a little bit different looking group today in studio. We have our North America CEO, Kevin Erickson, and a very, very special guest joining us here in the studio, Gail Stout Perry. And Gail, you're in for Jake. I wouldn't say big shoes to fill, but they are shoes to fill, more than capable of doing it, Gail.
I thought she's auditioning, right? She's going to just get rid of Jake. Is that what we're doing? Or
I thought we were talking about shoes. Jake has very big feet. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Quite literally, yes. But he's not here. You have the opportunity to take his place on how this podcast goes. But we'd love for you just to give a quick introduction. So happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm Gail Stout Perry. I'm a partner here at Credera based in Dallas. I've been with Credera over 7 years now. And I lead our financial services practice, but I'm also an executive sponsor for our Women in Tech. And that's kind of my role here in this podcast today.
Awesome. I think it's one of those things where, as I think about Kevin, our New Year's resolution for the podcast, as we looked forward to 2026, was to bring on more guests, bring on more voices, and hear other people's opinions on what's happening, not only in the tech world, but with AI, machine learning, companies, executives, all of that good stuff that we try and talk about and cover here on the pod. And I think this episode is definitely probably towards the top of this topic that we're going to bring up today, because as everyone knows, International Women's Day. By the time this episode airs, it will have already happened, but for us now recording here on a Friday, it is coming up this weekend. And I think this topic today is really special, and I want to introduce our guests we'll have to use technology to go across the pond to bring on our guests today, and that would be Andrea and Slavina. And first off, welcome to the podcast. So happy to have you all here. I know we've had a lot of conversations leading up to this podcast, but would love for you to give the listeners an introduction of yourself, give a little bit of a background, and why we're here today. So Andrea, we'll start with you.
Thanks very much. So my name is Andrea Marshall Webb. I'm managing director in the London office of Credera. Don't let the accent fool you. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, but I've lived in the UK for over 26 years. But I sit within our public sector team, and I lead on inclusive AI and AI transformation. But I'm also the exec sponsor for our Women in Tech organization over on this side of the pond in the UK. And I'm also the part of the global leadership team for the Omnicom Open Disability ERG as well. So inclusion is very much at the heart of what I do and what is important to me. And really, really pleased to be here today. Thank you.
All right, Slavina, how about you?
Amazing, thank you. Hi, folks. My name is Slavina Racheva, and I'm a managing consultant at Credera. I work within the MarTech space predominantly, but also I've been very heavily involved in the AI side of things. I am the AI platform enablement lead within Credera. I've been here for about 3.5, 4 years, I think, and I've been working in data and technology since I started my career a very, very long time ago, but with a machine learning AI focus probably for the last 6 or 7 years, I would say. And last year, we piloted our AI gender gap series, which Andrea and I have been working on ever since. And we have seen some absolutely amazing momentum and engagement through it. And we're really, really excited to be talking to more people about it today.
Yeah, certainly glad to have you on for that. And if, for our listeners out there listening, if you can pick up the theme here, the theme for today is going to be women in tech and what that looks like today, and what are the challenges, but also the opportunities, right? I think one of the things we try and do here on the Pure Signal podcast is give business leaders and executives and those that listen to this, that they want to understand what's going on and how they can improve upon or excel their businesses in those certain areas. And so this one, of course, very relevant for today. So I want to bring up women in tech has come up a couple of times now. Obviously, we have two different flavors of that within the UK and then within North America. So I would love to, Gail, to just kick off with you, just talk about the genesis of Women in Tech, not only as an organization, but just in general.
Well, we stood up Women in Tech a couple years ago. We do have Credera Women's Network, but we realized that there are very different needs for women who are in our tech practice. You know, in management consulting, we have a lot of women. We've got a solid pipeline of talent, but in Women in Tech, we still have a leaky pipeline, right? And that's common across the industry, right? So it's like, what is it about that? So let's create a community for these women. And so we've done several things to enable that. Do you want me to go and talk about the conference or?
Yeah, we can get to the conference in just a second. But Andrea, from you and Slavina's perspective, obviously this was something happening in the States. How does that look? Does it look any different across the pond, or would love to hear your perspective on that?
So we have a smaller women in tech internal facing organization for our women within Credera who work in technology for exactly the same reasons that Gail's just identified. But one of the other things that we've started to do, and this is off of the back of Slavina's amazing report on the AI gender gap, is start to engage the market and engage our clients and potential clients in some of the issues that are relevant in technology for women, particularly with the genesis of AI and the fast pace of AI. And we have had an amazing engagement from public sector and private sector clients who come to talks and panels and roundtables, etc. I'm sure I'm missing a couple of things, Slavina, but that have transpired over the last year. And it's just been a very inspiring way, not only inspiring for our women internally, because they also get to engage with our clients, but with our clients as well. And it has sparked lots of conversations and helped us to understand some of the challenges that our clients face through some of those forums.
I would love to dive into, Gail, you mentioned the conference, and I think that's something that's really important to bring up. But before we even get there, I want to talk about like the conversations and the things that made you, of course, kind of perk up and say there's a real opportunity not only to create something here, but to really drive this thing forward in this day and age.
Well, if you just look at our project teams, the project you were on with me, we had a single woman on that project for a long time. So if you look at our tech teams, very often the tech woman is still the only woman in the room. And I know what that feels like, right? And so Nikori and I were, talking about this, and she's looking at the data, and it's like, we need to create this community because there's just different needs. For example, sometimes they get talked over, right? So how do you deal with that? Sometimes they're not sure how to advocate for themselves, and we'll probably get into that. But women are sometimes hesitant for a lot of reasons to advocate or negotiate for themselves. But when you have a community, we're really, really good at negotiating when we're doing it on behalf of someone else. And we're really, really good at advocating when we do it on behalf of someone else. And so if you have others that you can draw upon, then you feel stronger, right? And more confident. And that's what we're aiming for. Is to help our women figure out how to progress in their careers, to feel like they belong, and to stay. Over 50% of women leave their career between the 10th and 20th year. Like that's the pipeline, leadership pipeline that's broken, right? So how do we get out ahead of that and prevent that? It's possible. It's been done. It's been done in other areas of business. So let's do this for tech.
Yeah.
We'll jump in. We'll continue to talk with themes. And Gail, you introduce yourself as a partner, a strategist. That's how we see you today. You're leading our financial services business. But for a second, you don't like to talk about yourself, but I actually think it's helpful for us. This is not only have you been an advocate for the years that I've known you, you've been an advocate for our employees, you've been an advocate for women, folks that are in different elements, but it's personal. I mean, your story around technology, being the single person in the room, whether it be from a consulting perspective, but one of the things that was always been inspiring for me is that you've been in consulting or technology consulting for a long time. And I just would love for you to give a little bit of context of, because we see you more on the MC strategy side today, but your roots are actually really in this space.
Thank you, Kevin. Yes, I went to engineering school way back in the 80s. I'm going to date myself. And there was not even a ladies' room in the Department of Engineering. There were 3 of us women there. And so that's kind of been the theme of my career. So I came out and I was a technologist. So for most of my career, I've been the only woman in the room on the variety of jobs. And when I moved into strategy, because I was in the boardroom, because I was working with C-suites, I was still the only woman in the room. I was the consultant, but my clients were pretty much all male. So that's been the story. So when I came to Credera as the first female partner, I wasn't scared by that because that had been my story and it doesn't bother me. But Andrea and I were talking yesterday about how it never occurred to me that I didn't have a seat at the table. I didn't belong at the table. And I had an epiphany about 15 years ago when I was at my first women-only conference that a lot of women don't feel that way. They feel like they need to be invited to the table. And so that's like, okay, what can I do to open the door and hold it open and elevate women and bring them to the table with me? And so, yes, that is a passion of mine.
Yep. Yep. So it's just been interesting to see you, and we'll continue to get into the macro themes. And again, the macro themes and the Credera themes, they kind of overlap, and we're all progressing towards newer elements of that. But just been so grateful for you and your leadership and breaking down those barriers. But also, I think specifically because you said like our management consulting in general, both statistically and in Credera, is much more. That's not as much our clients and everything else, but in our technologists, it's been very much to see a room and have people grow up in their career. It's been very solitary. And so thank you for your care, leadership, and now advocacy, not only for our internal employees, but now in this audience, as we tie into the work that our UK friends have done in terms of the gender gap and elements. And then how do we continue to really make a better world? I mean, not to make it big, but bigger opportunity for that. But then how it ties back to how we deliver, how we care, how we grow and develop talent with these themes that are now today.
I would love to throw this, I think a thing that we've heard a lot about here in the first opening couple of minutes, and I want to throw this out to the group. It seems to me like community is the foundational piece of this. And I would love to dive into that, because we always talk about, like, when we're going in and working on projects and clients and doing data strategy, we always talk about building this foundation. And it seems very fitting that what I'm hearing so far in the early couple of minutes of this is that, like, really at the core of this is having a foundational sense of community. And then we can dive into the conference and what that means and how that looked. But would love to just hear from the group about, to them, what does that foundation look like for this?
I think it's what Gail was saying, and something that Andrea has really been championing is opening that door to others, because I've been reflecting on something that I've heard both of you say about feeling like somebody needs to invite you to the table. My approach has been slightly more different, maybe more Eastern European, shall I say, where I've always just butted in. And then I started noticing that I was the only female person in the room, only female person in the wider technical team. And at that point, I realized that was quite an exception. And it really has been female leaders around me who have helped me settle in and help me understand the opportunities around me and help me find the direction in which to grow and develop. And that is exactly the type of behavior that we need to model out, because we talked about men as allies and women as allies, but I think everybody has to model out this behavior of inclusivity and calling things in and bringing everybody around to the same kind of opportunity. And that's exactly the type of behavior that we've seen from leaders like Andrea and Gail. And it's absolutely incredible to be able to work in a place that has these values and really, really does demonstrate them so actively. I think some of the work that Andrea has done has been absolutely fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to hearing her reflection on this as well.
So Slavina, I love that you're talking about breaking the double bind, right? If someone like you is assertive, right? A naughty word, it's assertive and likable. You can be both. You can step in and not be punished for it, and you can succeed, and you model that, then others will follow or be brave enough to do that, like have the courage to do that. Because one of the things that holds a lot of women back, right? So we have two paths. We can invite, open the door, but we can also model and show that it's okay to be this way.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Yeah, and I think as well, very much like you, Gail. I mean, I started my career probably roughly the same time, and I worked in strategy consulting, and I was used to being the only woman in the room, and that became kind of normal. I also think it's what impacts that confidence as well is whether you've stepped out of the career and have come back into the career, or you maybe have stepped into technology consulting. So again, for me, I didn't really enter technology consulting until my very late 40s, when I came back into work after having raised my family and taken care of my mother. So, I had women around me pulling me and giving me the confidence that I could still do this job and I could still be really, really good at it. But also that fear of, oh my goodness, I need to learn something new. And, I'm not an expert in technology, but I am a pretty good management consultant. So I learned as fast as I could. And but I did have the support of people who had gone through a similar experience around me, which, again, back to your community point, Ryan, for me was incredibly important because I had people that I could share my experience with. And I think that helps to kind of push me further, farther, faster, really.
Can I just add one more point, which I think it's quite important for many years, and this still is a problem, we still see women being overrepresented in childcare responsibilities, caretaking responsibilities at home. And I feel when women find themselves in a very difficult, intense technical role at work, they don't quite always know how to manage the pressures of this new job, plus the added pressures that some of their male colleagues might not be experiencing at the same time. So having this community around you to tell you when you can push back, when you can kind of relax a bit more, when you can demand more, that is really important, because we've talked about confidence in the past and how women feel less confident than some of their male counterparts might do. So it's amazing to have this community around you to say, you're absolutely okay to push back on certain things. You are absolutely okay to put boundaries around you. You are doing enough. And that is supported by the people around you. And I think that is part of that community element as well, that we are very much seeing as something that's growing and evolving around us.
Yeah, and what I love about everything that I've just heard is it just seems like, we all recognize the problem, but in my mind, what I'm hearing is, how do we solution it, right? And it's not thinking that like, well, it's a problem that's just always going to exist. Y'all have not let yourselves think that way. And this is kind of where I was getting to with the sense of community is like, and I want to make this very clear, while we have you three on, there's a ton of people behind the scenes, a ton of women doing amazing things that have helped lift up a lot of these things that we're talking about. Y'all are just the lucky ones that get to be on camera and talk about those things. But, as we get to like we know community is the heart of what is going to help push this thing forward. One of the things we've mentioned was the Women in Tech conference, Gail, and I'd love for your perspective on this. And I know, Andrea, in our pre-show meetings, we talked about some of the engagements that you've done to help push these things along, but would love to start with the conference because that was a big point of note for us to head into this podcast.
Fantastic. No, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it was sort of the genesis for the podcast, I think. Which is exciting. So Women in Tech, this was our second full year. And early in the year, we set some goals, right? We wanted to grow the community. There's a lot of things we wanted to do. But as we entered the second half of the year, we'd made progress, but not huge progress. And we had a working session and we had a Miro board, people from all over the country. And somebody put something about conference. I know a lot of the women wanted to go to a very expensive conference in the back half of the year, and we hadn't budgeted for that. And so as we kind of got scrappy and thought about what can we do, we could bring all the women to Dallas, as many that wanted to come, and we could do a 2-day conference here. But then it's like, what do we do with that? Like, these are women in tech. We don't put on conferences. We're not event planners. Like, what do we do with that? And so we focused on the goals of the conference. One is to create that sense of community and belonging and have some fun, of course. But more importantly, what can we learn? Can we make this a learning experience? And one of our leaders in AI, Mackenzie, had developed this rapid prototyping model. And it's like, well, what if we teach the women how to do that? And a third prong I added was, let's grab the backlog that the firm has for AI use cases and see if we can build some rapid prototypes for those. So we ended up with 40 women from 7 of our locations came to Dallas, and we built 15 of these prototypes. And that's what Kevin was talking about when he walked into the room. And it probably felt like 100 to you. It was a lot of energy. These women were getting up and presenting their prototypes, very confident, very articulate. I was so proud of them because, you remember when there was, I think one of the Chelsea Klein and Rachel Slater are the leads of Women in Tech. And Chelsea mentioned, because she's been at Credera a long time, all the women in tech could fit in the same car to go to lunch. And so to have this conference room overflowing with this energy and this intelligence, it was amazing. It felt wonderful.
Yeah. One of the things that was my recollection of that was not only just the room, the ideas, the energy, but I thought the humility of our senior leaders that you were leading, because often the experience was you were pairing a more junior member with a more senior member. And in this case, the more junior member typically had more technology, more AI, more of those elements. And it was just really, really cool to see our senior team that very skilled in their crafts and how they play that are learning new skills and are showing that vulnerability that I thought was really inspiring too. And then just how much that also gives out the energy to someone who's relatively new to their career and craft, that you're able to come in, and because of that domain knowledge, energy, learning, that it actually levels the playing field, which is really one of the things, not both for our emerging technologies, both men and women, but in this case for women. I think it's been really one of my messages to our start groups over the last couple of years has been, you may have more AI skills than many of the people in our clients or some of our employees that you're going to work with, and be very confident in those elements of application and how you work through that. But and this is also fun. Also, going back to the conference itself, it's also fun to see some of those things start to now be used and they start to trickle into our actually operating rhythms.
You're exactly right. That's what I kept saying like during the conference is the starting line is right here. It's right here. And we can all put our toe on the starting line. Nobody has an unfair advantage right now. Like this is new, it's emerging, and we can all start together. So let's step up to the line and let's go. Yeah. It was so exciting. I built something, Kevin. I built something with a lot of help.
What else is kind of a different, and we'll steer it back here in a second, but I think there's we both started at Accenture or a variant of Accenture way back in the day. Everyone started coding. Both, you're more engineering background. Mine was more liberal arts in the business side, but I also did that. Not tying back to me, but what's intriguing to me now is that everyone, regardless of your craft or discipline, is going to be a variant of technology. Everything we do, how we work through it, it's changing how we do consulting. It's accelerating how we do engineering. Engineering is much more data driven than it was around actually building something. And so what's kind of cool right now is that, and we're going to be in a meeting later on this afternoon where this is going to be hit pretty hard, but it's going to be like, you have to develop these skills and have to think about our craft differently. And I think that in that context of that room, and really not even just what in that room, because it's really how you care for that group on an ongoing basis, they're ahead. They're ahead of a lot of our clients. They're ahead of a lot of our male counterparts that are in leadership roles. And I think, and that is just exciting for me to kind of continue to push the opportunities, but also to really, the fact that there's a bit of a leveling of a new playing field, it creates a chance for us to have something that's going on much broader than Credera, much broader in society now, that allows us to continue to revisit areas that we didn't do well in the past, and how can we create environments that allow people to thrive in all the different skill sets and abilities, but in this case, driven by very different technology changes that are impacting all facets of client delivery in our life.
I love that.
Andrea, Slavina, would love to just get your reaction to, when you hear these things about the conference, and of course we've talked about it before, but would love just to get your reaction on that and what that's looking like in the UK at the moment. I know that's an initiative you're trying to continue to push forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So our Women of Credera network, which, as you said earlier, Gail, is slightly different than the women in tech side of things. We have Olivia Jones and Elodie Durant who are leading on that. And we've already started talking about how can we do something similar to what's been done in the US, because I think that all of the positives and benefits that you've stated are critical for our own internal organization as well. So we're hoping to do something similar in the near future, and we will be trying to understand what the best practice is so that we can do it as well as you have from that community perspective. We do have something organized for International Women's Day through this network, but again, we have many fewer women, I think, as well within the UK. But again, it's something we absolutely want to do because it's so important.
Yeah. Well, I think some of the really amazing work that you've done is also, there's been some events in the space of upskilling girls in tech as well. Some AI training events, which I think have been absolutely amazing in terms of AI literacy, bringing more girls to the table, encouraging them to step into this space of technology and science as well. So I think that addressing these issues at the root and just giving that confidence to young women is absolutely incredible as well, and just plants that seed in their head at a very opportune moment, I think, as well. So it's not just about people who are established in the industry, but also bringing young people on this journey too.
Yeah, and a lot of our CSR work in the UK is actually around that. I'm going to be delivering one of these AI literacy programs in Manchester for a group of economically disadvantaged youth, and it will be women, and it will be a group of women delivering for a group of young women. And as Slavina said, I think it's really, really important for young people to be able to see themselves in some of the leaders that are around them, and understand and aspire to do those types of roles. And so it's really important. I'm really looking forward to it.
That's great. Well, I was just gonna the context we're talking about today is really around women in tech and how it's going to tie back to AI themes. But I do think what's really been really encouraging for me in my role in North America, looking at our our UK friends and colleagues is that I think that you have a more inclusive view of inclusivity, maybe a little bit awkward way I just said that, but you think about it through different elements in a more broader way than we do. And which has really been encouraging for me as I think about how we lead and how I lead our North America team in the context. So, it's been very easy to go the tech and kind of just the, gender roles, elements of that consulting bias into management consulting versus tech. I mean, I've lived that for almost going 30 years of my consulting career. But it's more than just that. And I think that that's an area where, I think we can continue to grow in North America in that just understanding and really thinking about how we just really construct teams and outcomes that have a more, broader view internally and how we serve our clients and our people. And, I think for us, it's always, or at least for me, I'll make it personally, it's very much the other way around. We start with our people, how we serve and grow and develop our people. By doing that, then we have great outcomes with our clients. But that's what I love about being part of a global organization now, is that we can take different parts of the world, different types of understanding, culturally elements of that, and bring that into the solutions. And I really want to continue to have that and model that here, what we get to do. Sure. If I kind of a little bit of hard pause, but then went back in, one thing that's interesting about North America, and this is not again about congratulations for what we're at, but Gail mentioned a painful part of our history in terms of just, really the imbalance that we had from a gender perspective, our partner team, how we broke those barriers down. So how do we promote, one of the things that's really challenging for all kinds of reasons. I mean, the likelihood of how you have any person going from off campus and have them grow and promote up into a partnership level of consulting firm is difficult, even more difficult within tech. It's more difficult within the normal, just kind of different elements we were talking about before in life roles, how that plays into it. How do you have those different perspectives of that? But what's been really intriguing to us in North America, not only, in that room, it's so inspiring for me to see, you mentioned McKinsey and the passion she has for technology, change, women, elements of that teaching. But we've actually, we have our female partner team in North America is actually more technical than MC, which is in itself I think in my history, a very not what you would have normally expected. And, that's not one of those little things that, hey, that was on the bingo card to go do. It happened very organically with how we found great people and great cultural fits. But it's also another area of I was looking at that room with the leaders, and almost everyone in there either started and still has a very strong technical bent or technical delivery bent, or is actually one of our best technology practitioners, which I think today it's not just simply is there a woman in that room? Oh, they're a management consultant versus technologist. Well, now they can point to someone and say, well, we're leading, we're selling work at Amazon. We're doing great clients. And the person leading the technical discussion is someone who wouldn't normally have been in that role, at least in our history, not that long ago.
Right.
I was going to say that I'm kind of responsible for our service offering in the UK on the AI strategy and value realization, and made a conscious decision that we're going to work globally on that one. Have been working with McKinsey and Tiffany and Aparna, and it's been an absolute powerhouse pleasure to be working with those women and actually developing this thinking from a global perspective. And so, I feel that, we are able to bring slightly different perspectives into the work that we're doing. And it just feels different. It feels different. And I hope that more of the younger women, at least in Credera UK, have an opportunity to work with more senior women. There's a few of us in the business, but as I said, we're much smaller than our North America practice. And Sam Squires, who's another MD as well in the practice, she and I do our best to make sure that happens.
I want to tell Kevin, careful what you ask for in terms of modeling the UK. And we have done an incredible job in the US of supporting women through that phase of life where you're the caregiver, right? We have a senior architect who's still part-time. So we do a really good job of enabling that. I think about the next phase, when I say careful what you ask for, the very first time I joined a UK women's CWN call, do you know what the topic was? Menopause. I felt so seen, because that's another phase. If you want to be a woman and leader, you're going to be dealing with this, and it's no joke in terms of what it does to your brain and everything else. And so it's a scary time, and that's another time when women step out. That's next.
I love that, Gail. I love that you've said the M word.
I said it.
Menopause. I'm going to say it to you. Actually, on Wednesday, I was on a panel that the Cabinet Office here, UK government, the Office for Equality and Opportunities, they've just released an action plan on closing the gender gap here, the pay gap here in the UK. But it's not just, it's closing the gender pay gap and menopause support, as mandated by the government. And the Secretary of State, Bridget Phillipson, was there speaking about it, and she was extremely impassioned. And one of the things we discussed on that panel was how much things have moved, whereby we can sit in a room of 80 men and women and talk openly about menopause and other things, IVF, other things that impact women's lives over the course of their life, and how those things play into their work environments. And so just kind of creating that awareness and feeling comfortable talking about it, I think is so important. It goes back again, Ryan, to the community point that you were making. I feel that particularly at Credera, it is a very open organization where you can talk about these things, and it really makes a difference. It really does for our people.
It also goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the leaky pipeline, where essentially we are losing women from the workforce. Because if you think about it, there's so many points during a woman's career at which your ability to be part of the workforce is actually impacted, whether it's childbirth, IVF, adoption, whether it's caretaker responsibilities of an elderly parent or somebody else within the family, whether it's menopause. There's so many stages at which women can exit the workforce or feel disengaged or ignored as part of the workforce. And the actual recruitment and the mechanism of opening doors, there's not much the same type of volume of losing women from the workforce. So I think we kind of need to focus on opening the floodgates to really help women feel confident and welcome and invited and really, really needed within the tech industry and the workforce in general. And then we need to work on essentially supporting them, providing that level of support across all of these life stages where we start seeing them leave the workforce as well. So it's quite a complex challenge that we are facing, but small steps better than no steps.
Yeah. Well, I think I think it's the awareness and working through that and the shared experience. I mean, just even like a traditional consulting firm, average age in North America, I think is 27. I don't know if that's actually accurate, but it's pretty close. And I think just as we continue to have much wider range of ages and experiences in our business, I think it's great that we can continue to think through that. That was not on my bingo card for something that we would be on my radar list
Ryan's
today.
Going,
but
this is not on the run of show, ladies.
But it is in my, not that I get shared experience from my personal life, but it's interesting, Slavina, everything you just described, at least as my family unit have gone through that. My engineering wife and all the different elements of our stages of life, and we have different choices, and so dad of 3 girls, and so working through that. So again, not only about just my role of leading our company and the region, how we work through that. So very much believe in that, but also personally how we continue to create experiences. But I'd love for us to we've talked a bit now around some of the elements, life stages, role stereotypes, all that plays through that, different, elements of visibility. I'd love now to maybe shift it a bit to, let's now think specifically around technology, some of the emerging AI themes. How do we, we've got some construct of where this challenge has been, where are there opportunities now that we can continue to amplify, whether it be through some of the techniques we're already talking about and just continue to mainstream that, make it better, work through that, but also where there's some things happening now that can actually help us to accelerate and close some of these gaps faster than we would have before.
Moving from risk to opportunity, I think we actually do need to focus on the numbers here a tiny bit, because what we know from the industry now is that women represent a tiny, tiny fraction of professionals in data and AI. We know that they also tend to be proportionally more disengaged with the tools than men are. We know that they are predominantly in job roles that are at more of a risk of being automated and displaced by AI. And all of that creates this really, really tricky and dangerous situation where essentially women feel less confident, less engaged in the use of these tools, and at the same time are put at a higher risk of actually being automated, having their jobs automated by AI. And it brings us to this self-perpetuating cycle. You have less representation. You have the tools being developed by groups that can be a bit more homogenous in terms of their composition, whether it's generally male, generally Western. The representation of women and culturally diverse parts of society is generally an issue there. And then you see these tools that tend to serve those same people that make up the majority of the people who are actually behind developing these tools. And what you also tend to see through that is women pull back from some of these solutions and these systems because the way that they are designed are not necessarily with women in mind. Also, what we've seen in the news is that AI and similar systems can very much be weaponized and used to very much harass and manipulate women in the online space as well. So technology has kind of created this really dangerous situation where women don't really feel like AI was developed for them. It's not developing with them. And I think there's so many opportunities in terms of reshaping the roles that we see as part of enterprise to really focus on the skills that women can bring to the workforce. Solutions around education, upskilling, some of the fantastic work that McKinsey and co have been doing as part of the conference and the workshops and all of these prototyping solutions. I think there's so many opportunities that can be addressed as part of this problem. It's just a matter of how do we build awareness and how do we bring more people on this journey with us and how do we recruit more women to essentially say, hey, I feel confident to open the door to more people around me, create these opportunities for everyone else and bring people on this journey and help them upskill, educate, experiment and bring that experience, those fresh perspectives back to the workforce, which is a lot of what Andrea has been doing as well through some of the inclusive AI series. And I think that's something that is absolutely amazing. It's probably a good opportunity to talk about some of that as well.
So I think, we definitely have seen in a lot of the events that we have had and a lot of the client events that we've had that adoption for most of them is the main issue when it comes at the moment with regards to AI. So they've got tools, they've got lots of proofs of concept. However, people aren't using the tools. And so what we've been doing is trying to almost layer over this information that Slavina's just shared on, why are particularly women not adopting as quickly as others, for example. So, in without naming names, in some of the events that we've done, we've learned that things like we talked about it already, actually, a lack of confidence in using the tools, a lack of leading and actually using the tools or saying that the tools are important or I understand AI and this is why we think you should use it. The fact that there are women who are coming into a room, Gail, like you said, and are being expected to be technical, but are too embarrassed to say that they don't actually understand what they're doing, or they view themselves as cheating when they're using AI. So there's lots of reasons why women more particularly are not adopting the tools. And I mean, the reason I think we're linking it back to what Slavina was saying is that it's critical to really understand that and to try and figure out how do we unblock that is proportionally a lot of the roles that are going to go with AI, whether it's back office or front office, are done by women currently. So if that's the case, then we need to ensure that some of those roles, and if it's done by AI, those women are able to use the tools in order to be able to retain their roles within companies, basically. So I think that's the focus of what we're doing at the moment to try and understand, what are the levers that we can pull.
I was going to kind of double down on that confidence gap. We talked about this before, Ryan, that there's actually data that shows that women feel like we have to check 100% of the boxes and be 100% sure that we can do the thing before we do the thing. And men are about 60%, like whether it's applying for a job, advocating for a new role for yourself, what have you.
And so less than that. It's less than that. Men typically have about 10% of the bullets on a job ad before they apply versus I think something like 85 to 90% women will want to have that on their CV, on their on the job advertisement before applying for it. So it's a bit crazy.
My point was with AI, I think that's one of the reasons women are slower to adopt, although I did see a study that says women are now adopting 3 times faster than men. Yeah, because I think that's that confidence thing. I don't know exactly what I'm doing. And I also don't want to look like I'm cheating because we're also rule followers. But I think if we circle back to the conference, I think what was powerful about that is nobody knew what we were doing. And we were forced into prototyping and failing fast. And I'm like, I don't even know how to use Copilot. And I just had to dive in. Yep. And you know what? Nothing bad happened. Like we figured it out. We powered through it. And it's like, that gave me confidence coming out of I've built my own agents since then. If I couldn't find a data scientists to help me. I've built an agent. Of course, I had it, fact checked by a proper
but
adult,
even like to build on that, we were in a shared meeting a couple of weeks ago where we were introducing an agent-based solution, and one thing that was struck out to me is that it was introduced, you were actually already trying it in the meeting and asking about a barrier that had nothing to do with you, but it was a barrier that was stopping it. And I'm like, my reflection on that was like, I love the fact that, man, we literally just shared this, and you're already playing with it and using it. And so that was I felt that was really encouraged, because that was in front of about 300 people that had a chance to kind of see that you're already, you're going after that. I think it's interesting around when this is a made up fact for me, so maybe that speaks to the confidence or not. But what I think is interesting is, I think in general right now, because we know that AI driven research and drivens naturally isn't accurate. Right? There's a fudge factor of 8 to 10%. So you have to be able to work through that. I think one of the unintended benefits of that, there's tons of unintended risk, because people they don't have the experience to know that that's not right. But it actually creates a bit of gray. And a little bit of, so if you have a confidence gap, and you have people fake it, you make it, or you naturally kind of play into it, and you have another cohort of our population that is needs to be right, rule followers, because now everything starts to become gray on the edges. I'm hoping that actually gives some freedom to be able to play through that in a way that allows people to know that, hey, everyone's going to be slightly off, but the speed of not doing it is actually so much greater. And then I think one of the things, Andrea, that was really encouraging from what you just said is it's good for us to continue, because right now I think, and I'm coming from a bias of a senior leadership, advising our clients, advising our people, for how we in our day jobs use AI, and how that plays down below through our teams and our departments. It is a little bit, how do you do it? Where do you work through it? How you model that? How you show through that? And so I think part of it is that we are all going to a spot that we don't quite know where it's at, and it may be easier to tell than to actually do and lead. And so how do we model that? I think that there is a couple traits that I would say that actually, I don't have data, so you all have the data, so you can fact check me on this, but I think curiosity is a bit more of a trait that actually plays out to where women can use to work through this problem solving. Actually the fact that you're juggling stereotypically a lot more, having to get through it. I mean, there's a lot of elements that I actually think, this is a little slightly different technical view. I know that Credera's roots in both sides of our ponds is very technical. My particular belief is that we're going to see a merging of technology across all our disciplines. And, and there's some of those elements around job losses. I'm mindful of what our clients make me go through. I'm actually not very worried that our employees, that we're going to see those job losses, but I do think the job is going to change. And I think it's going to be a lot of process definition. I think it's going to be a lot of re-envisioning how things done. I think it's going to be around thinking about it differently, which I think actually plays out to the traditional stereotype of a woman and how you think about problems, how you work through that in a way that might be in this, we're starting to actually create natural instincts and abilities that will start to bury the gap, which I'm actually really excited about, because I actually think for many of what we do, and particularly Gail and your point of our crafts, is really around how do you restructure? How do you reorganize? How do you get the best out of things? How do you understand where the human capital and the spark of the human capital comes into, the actual element of the process element of that? And it's going to be potentially some of the hardcore technical skills that would have stereotypically gone more to males may not be done anymore, at least by a consulting firm. And so I use that as a hopeful thing, not as as something that I think that maybe helps, really lowers the gaps and helps creates an even more even playing field.
I mean, my background is in business transformation. So as I said, I'm not historically a technical person. And I actually think that this challenge is much more around that than it is necessarily technical. I think we were speaking yesterday about the fact that, we've had many waves of technology come through, whether it was cloud or e-commerce back in the day, or just internet, and so essentially it's a challenge of change, really. And I think that what we need to be focusing on is how do we ensure that organizations are set up so that they can face that change head on, and that is through things that are, I guess, as you were pointing out, it's slightly on the softer side. I mean, I wouldn't say they're soft. So,
I wouldn't either. I wasn't implying that, but it's a different skill set that is going to be pushed by technology, but and I think you're going to get bounced out, whether it be in a consulting career or in a organization, if you don't be able to do that faster, then you actually don't even know what you're doing with AI tools.
I think there's also a bit of a contentious point that needs to be addressed around ethics. And when we started the AI Gender Gap series, one of the things that came up organically in every single room was the fact that women were much more concerned around the ethics in terms of, is this cheating? What is the impact on the environment? What is the impact in terms of plagiarism and using data that these models have been trained on? And I think that enterprise and society has a responsibility towards women and towards underrepresented communities to demand better of the companies that are building these solutions. I absolutely recognize the need for change in education. But if you feel like these tools are being designed against you, not with you, you are naturally going to disengage.
And we see that. I mean, we've seen that in a lot of the conversations that we've had, that, women particularly aren't comfortable ethically using some of the tools, and it is one of those barriers to their adoption. And so ensuring and talking about how in designing these systems inclusively will produce inclusive services, it will produce inclusive products. And again, that's not just women, that's socioeconomic or disability, neurodiversity, things that I'm very passionate about. And so, ensuring that you've got the diversity at the beginning of the line will ensure that you have what comes out the end is going to be much better and more suitable. And ultimately, it will ensure that governments and businesses are more successful, because ultimately they want people to use the services or buy the products. So let's design them in a way that means that they can sell more and serve more.
I love that.
Yeah, I think, I'm hearing all these stories shared, and to me, it sounds like there's a lot of action items that need to take place amongst the industry to address a lot of these problems. And one of the things I really wanted to, as we kind of circle back towards, what does this mean for moving forward, right? How do we put things in place that will be successful to amplify and elevate these types of things that we're talking about? Is, we kind of centered on the conference being the genesis of this conversation. But what I want to make sure of is that, I know for me personally, when we were at CES, right? You see a lot of stuff that you're like, oh, that's really cool, but you'll never see it out in the consumer market. You'll never be able to buy that thing that you saw that was really cool. And so when I come out of conferences, I feel like I can take on the world, and then I get back to my normal every day, and I'm like, kind of go back to my old environment where I maybe feel like I'm not, contributing as much as I want or whatever. So how do we take what happens at those conferences or these speaking events, Andrea and Slavina, that you guys are a part of, and really amplify that out and start building the capability rather than, keeping it at that individual level?
We talked about, continuing to carve out space and time to experiment and to learn, right? So, and I know that the technology solutions practice here, we have pods. We're going to have working groups and other conferences within Women in Tech, but carving out that time when you're so busy with client work, sometimes it's hard to go play, if you will, and teach yourself what's next. So being intentional about that, encouraging that. And as a leader, I try to, in almost every circumstance, is there a way we could use AI for that? Can we insert AI in that? I've even been able to show young senior consultants and managers how to build an agent, right? We could use an agent for that. So really helping others lean in and just do is a big part of it. And I've got a secret weapon. We have a young senior consultant here. She's in her second year. She has her master's in AI, and she puts a meeting on my calendar about every 6 weeks and says, Gail, here's the latest thing in AI, and here's 3 or 4 use cases that I think you might find interesting. So these young people can teach us so much.
I'm smiling because Gail often has secret weapons.
I do have secret weapons.
She's been very good at usage of secret weapons.
My secret weapon's on this call with me, actually. Slavina is the secret weapon. We're the dynamic duo, but if without Slavina, I would be the 50-plus-year-old woman who still probably doesn't know how to turn on my computer, but now I'm able to talk and act and do within AI and technology, and it's all thanks to Slavina.
Yeah,
I'm blushing.
Yeah, well, maybe building on that too, and just even thinking about what things we can do, and just even make it. One of the things that's interesting for one of the joys of my job is that, in people business, I love working in people business, is really how do you help create space, opportunity, and courage, right? I'm so thankful because I just spend most of my day doing that. There's some things that aren't as much fun around some of those things, but one thing that's interesting, even we have a partner that we've mentioned several times on this call already, who's got more passion about what wants to work through that. And what's been interesting to do is often still comes and asks for permission or asks for, hey, just give me this and I can do this. And my prompt back is that just go do it and know that you trust, and not in a way that's meant to be parochial, not in a way it's really meant to be empowering. And there's people that will support you, that will cover you. And it's always, so I say this is not about the person, and nor do I want to, but it's a really good reminder of I want to, that is our job as leaders, regardless if it's a senior consultant who's been here or a consultant who's been here for one, or it's someone who is in a peer that you would consider, man, you're a peer in a role and you're way ahead of me in all these different areas. And I love that you're way ahead of me, because we're never going to grow as a company if we don't have people that are way ahead of where we're at. And but how do you actually protect? How do you encourage? How do you help break through that? And I think some of the themes that potentially why that in this particular incident are some of the blockers there, but just giving people the confidence to thrive in their area of expertise. And then we also put guardrails in. We can encourage, we can work through that. That ties into, one of the things I really appreciate about our UK team is that I do think there's a greater sensitivity around ethics and some of these other themes that you guys were just sharing, that it's not that we don't care about them. I mean, at the roots, Credera is a little bit of Texan, but so there's stereotype in that statement too. But I think it's important, I want to go fast every single day, go bigger, faster, and do that. But I also am very thankful, and I've told my colleague over and my counterpart in the UK that I greatly appreciate that there's often caution or a little bit more rigor that I know that team and he specifically brings into me, because otherwise I will just go as fast as I possibly can, and we'll kind of pick up the pieces as we get along the way. So
I think it's important. One of the things I hear there is, as an organization, from a culture perspective, having that psychological safety to be able to know that you're going to make a move and you might make a mistake, but that's encouraged and viewed as a good thing. And yes. I certainly think that that Donal, who you were, I'll just name call him now, but I think he's a really wonderful example of somebody who puts the guardrails in place, but actually gives the rope to those who want to take it, and the safety around that to be able to try things and, either fail or potentially succeed as well. And I think culturally, it's extremely important, not only generally from an inclusion perspective, but I think also as people move into using or adopting AI, because without that psychological safety, and Gail, you said it earlier, to fail fast and to be able to experiment, to get your hands dirty, to not feel that you need to be a perfectionist, to build that confidence. It's critical. All of those elements, all those parts of the recipe are critical for people to adopt AI generally, but particularly for women to adopt AI. And I think that we just need to kind of keep that in mind.
Can I build on this point, because I love every single thing that's been said so far, but I actually want to make this sound even more urgent, and I want to encourage women to be very aggressive in this space. What we've seen over the last few years is really amazing momentum in women educating themselves more and more about finance and investing, because we know there's a gap in terms of men's confidence and risk-taking levels when it comes to investment, and women's, and we're seeing this gap being bridged. I know there's also a lot of numbers, particularly in the US, about female college graduate and university graduates actually outpacing male graduates at the moment. I think once you help women understand the opportunity, but also the risk, and you give them the tools, they jump into it immediately, because we are hungry for change. We want to see positive change in this space. And I think actually, don't wait for your company to give you time to spend on this. It's very difficult to find time. And I'm saying this as a person who has time privilege. I don't have kids. I don't currently have caretaking responsibility of a senior parent. But you have to make that time. You have to find it, because this industry is very much coming for our jobs, and it's not really built with us in mind. If anything, it's at the moment is going against us. So we need to be really aggressive in this space. And I think we need to take steps here. If I can suggest some practical actions, I think identifying problems, whatever it is, if it's a to-do app that you always wanted to build, or you don't know how to do, you want a specific color or type of shopping list, or you need help at writing emails to school boards or anything like that, just go to Claude and give it a quick prompt and build an artifact and a prototype and publish an app. And then if you don't know how to use it, ask Claude to tell you how to use it. Find good podcasts, listen to this podcast, but find good podcasts around AI and technology that will educate you around how AI is progressing in society and the most recent things that you need to know, the most important news that you need to know, and make it your job to know everything about AI. If this is the industry you want to succeed in, and if you want to outpace the pace of change, make it your job. I made it my job 3 years ago to know absolutely everything there is about AI. And I write a newsletter that nobody reads. And I don't care that nobody reads it, but I still write it because it keeps me accountable. And it means that I know everything about AI. So I highly encourage women to just be much more aggressive about this and take it as an urgent issue that needs acting on. I think there's a lot of practical steps we can take.
On the back of that call to action, I think that ending on the and just take up space, right? Because I think that's one of the things that you talked about at one of our client events. That was the last thing you said on the stage that was the most memorable, and I think you should just have a chance to say it, frankly.
Take up space and be difficult. Yeah.
Take up space. That being just assertive and leaning in. The young woman that I mentioned, who's in her second year, her name is Gabriella Adams. And right now, in addition to being a full-time employee at Credera, she is a technical advisor she's on a board for an association in the Permian Basin. So think a lot of oil producers, owners, et cetera, who are trying to get their heads around AI. And how did she do that? She was in a coffee shop in Medellin and heard somebody talking on the phone and walked up and said, I know a little something about AI. And so you think landman, that's where she is. I love that.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're kind of morphing into our final thoughts and our calls to action and understanding that this is something that needs to be addressed now and continue to be addressed. So I want to give everybody, Gail, Andrea, Slavina, one last opportunity just to say your final thoughts. Maybe kind of think about it from the lens of, if we were having this podcast again 3 years from now, what would you hope the conversation is like? Maybe think about it that way. And what do you hope to see within that time? But we'd just love to go around the horn one last time. So we'll start with you, Gail.
3 years from now, I'd love us to be trying to solve the problem, or why can't we get more men into the pipeline for AI and tech? Because women have taken over.
Well, I mean, you're joking, but we're talking about the college, like, and not to go back into it now. This is obviously, Gail knows some of my passion about education as well, but like it's like 65-35, right? That's the split between female and male. Now we're 2 generations in North America to where where that's at, and now again, there's some of the splits of the makeup of that are don't necessarily cover, but I actually think that what we're seeing the trends in North America is that's absolutely going to be the case. So it's another area where I think women are really positioned to lead, and I think we'll see leapfrogging events. So, by
the way, I had 5 years in my mind, but with AI, I knocked it down to 3, just because everything's moving so fast.
There
right?
you go.
Yeah. Andrea, Slavina would love your final thoughts as well.
I will echo what Gail said. I mean, I would love to see more women in all levels within the organization that I work in, and also more broadly, leading on the conversations so that we don't have the fear factor anymore as part of it. I think that's really, really important. And I think as well, I would like people to be able to be their authentic selves. So showing up at work, being their authentic selves, whomever that is, whoever you are, whatever your background is, and knowing that that is not going to have any kind of negative impact on whether or not you are going to succeed within an organization. I think that AI can enable that to happen more quickly if it is designed in the right way. And that is a hope for me. And if I'm only allowed to stick to the 3-year time frame, I think it's doable.
Yeah, that's great. I love that.
Slavina, bring it home.
Bringing it home. Okay, there's two things that are going through my head at the moment. The first one is that stat around, I think it's 80 to 90% of the people building AI solutions are men. And the other thing that's in my head at the moment is just the absolutely incredible women that I get to work with on a day-to-day basis, Andrea and so many people around me. What I've learned from them is that when they build teams, when they build solutions, when they build, they do that with compassion and consideration for everybody around them, with inclusivity, and trying to develop systems and processes that really, really think about how does everybody exist in this space, in this ecosystem together, and how do things work for everybody? How do we build equity and equality into these systems? So I really want to kind of merge all of those points of what Gail was saying and say, what if these tools were built by 80 to 90% women rather than men? I want to know what these tools would look like then. I want to know what kind of solutions we'd be working with, because I would love to see this passion for inclusivity, for opening doors to other people, for giving people opportunities, for funding entrepreneurial ideas developed by women in third world countries, all of that kind of stuff. What would happen if the power shifted, or if the ratio shifted? Not necessarily the power, but I think we would have some absolutely incredible solutions on our hands.
Amazing.
I have to say, what mistakes would we make if it was majority women? Like, I would like to see absolute blend, best of all. Best of all.
Fantastic. Well, this has been such an amazing topic to talk with you all about. You all have brought so many wonderful thoughts and insights, and just pulling in from your own personal experiences to help everyone understand, what's really going on in this space. So I can't thank you enough, Gail, Andrea, Slavina. I know we took up a lot of your time today. I know we've had a lot of calls leading up to that, but I think all of those things pushed us forward to make this a really strong and powerful episode that hopefully those out there listening to this one can take some insights and some actions to help drive change within wherever they may be, whether in their organization, in their everyday personal lives, whatever that may be. That's the hope. So thank you all so much for joining, and we hope to, hopefully not 3 years from now, but hopefully we can see you even sooner and chat about what's the latest.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
So for myself, Ryan, for Kevin, and for Gail here in studio with us, and for Andrea and Slavina who joined us from across the pond, this has been another edition of the Pure Signal podcast, telling you to be bold and what, Kevin?
Be curious.
Exactly. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.